When we think about launch bottleneck, we don't often think about the ports. We think about so many other things involved in the process, in the supply chain, but the ports where the boosters that are spent are returned to land and then reused again, that has been a major bottleneck here at Port Canaveral. So I'm at the National Space Club Florida Committee Luncheon, where we're going to hear from the CEO of the Canaveral Port Authority, who's going to talk about the fact that there has been significant expansion, not only with space and launches and launch cadence, especially on the SpaceX side, but also with Blue Origin, but also an expansion of the cruise ships. And how do you balance the lucrative tourists that come in through cruise ships with the space flights that are increasing cadence every year? More and more, we are seeing this battle between space and budget when it comes to how we decide what to spend money on. And by we, I mean the people here at the Port Authority and the state of Florida. How do they decide how to spend the money to expand the port for both tourists and for spaceflight? And when we're talking about spaceflight, we are thinking ahead to not only SpaceX, which is going to have over 100 launches this year. How many out of the Cape? Possibly over 100. But also Blue Origin, that's now launching New Glenn, which intends to land on a barge as well. There are also space companies that use the port. Space Perspective was one of them. They're sort of dead now. I think I'll probably do a video on that later if you all want. But they had intended to use the port for their high altitude balloon tourism. Last year, there was a decision to be made. The Port Authority wanted to expand the port on the northern side for tourists, for cruise ships. However, that interfered with the bringing back of those spent rocket boosters. So the conclusion was that now the port is expanding on the southern side. And we're going to hear today from John Murray how the expansion is going, that's going to benefit the space industry, how Florida, how Port Canaveral can use the resources it has and the limited budget that it has to help spaceflight grow, not only here in the state of Florida, but other spaceports and marine ports are looking to see what happens here at the world's busiest spaceport.
The small yellow slice over there is space, and that's because in terms of our overall revenue stream, it's a very, very small component to us, although a very, very important part to us for a number of reasons. So there's a mix of government, military, and commercial space tourism launches that have gone from Port Canaveral just in the last year. And we're accommodating all of these recovery and offload operations. It's kind of funny that with the space guys, we always say, come in, do your business, and leave. We'll always be able to do that at Port Canaveral. But if you bring all your stuff to the port and tie it up and wait for your next launch for 6 months, we don't have the space to handle that. And if everybody comes and says they're coming, we're going to have a problem. Now, we'll morph into that in a minute. But right now we've got one operator who's less than 4 hours in a turn. And we look at it as a cargo ship comes, they discharge the cargo, they leave. Cruise ship comes in, do their business in the day, they leave in the afternoon. So we have that berth available for someone else. And the space industry is evolving to that, and we're really happy that we're there, and we've worked really closely with our partners to get there. Last year, this is coming straight out of our report that was just delivered to Space Florida, we had 12 Port Canaveral-based space vessels here in 2024, and combined, they had 1,502 days alongside the dock. So that's a significant use of port facilities to accommodate the space industry. And generally, when they say they're alongside the dock, some of them are doing nothing. They're just waiting for the next launch. So it's evolved such that when you've done a launch every 2 or 3 days, they're acting more like a cargo ship or a cruise ship. They drop, they go back out and get another. We're focused on launch and recovery operations, just like everything else we have. A port is a deep water asset, and the most valuable real estate we have is our bulkhead. And that's how you move product from water to land. And our goal is anything that gets on land, get it out of the port as quickly as possible. And if it goes onto a ship, get the ship out as quickly as possible. We're all about, that's our velocity that we look at and how we operate and function as a port. And we're not dissimilar than any other port. All ports are the same way. So we currently are accommodating both SpaceX and Blue, but there's potentially another 10 operators that are contemplating maritime operations. We know who they are. Those that look like they may be coming in the near term. We have ongoing discussions with them about their needs, requirements, how can we make it all work for them. And we try to work with our commercial space people as partners. And we meet with them regularly just to go over the operations and what can we do better and what can they do better. And it's a great working relationship, I have to say. Assuming the maritime growth, though, we alone at Port Canaveral can't handle the demand. And that is a big challenge for us. Even General Pensacola said, with reusability and a lot of boosters coming in off the ships, the port space is at a premium, and that's true. Now, you also have to think, how long is the maritime component going to be there, and at what point in the future might all the rockets come back to land? Because maritime assets aren't inexpensive, they're very expensive. And if there's a way to solve the issue where you can fly back to land, that's going to be more economical for the space industry. But it's all a function of payload and how high does it have to go and how much fuel you're going to have to burn to get it there, which drives the offshore recovery. Florida Department of Transportation funded a study through Space Florida to take a hard look at what other options are there to birth space equipment. So they brought KSC, NASA, Space Force, U.S. Army, Navy, Port Canaveral, commercial space companies, Coast Guard, Army Corps of Engineers, the list goes on. This study identified maritime options beyond Canaveral, including federal lands and water access. It's a phased approach to manage the growth. This phase 2 of this study is underway. The initial report was released last May. We're talking, $1 billion project plus here. And it would be a phased approach to start using some of the federal land. Blue and SpaceX are pretty much established where they are. And I don't know, with Starship coming online at some point, there may be even a less of a maritime requirement from SpaceX.
So after that really interesting talk, which I personally did not know a lot about, I guess that people who are local here for longer than me have learned a lot more about the Cape, the port at the Cape than I have. But I learned a ton. I had no idea that there was such a demand on the space. I mean, we sort of knew that, but I did not know it was that packed. I did not realize that one thing that John Murray said was that sometimes they have to move things around so much, like Blue Origin's been using some of the terminals for the cruise ships sometimes. Like, they just have to move things around so much. It actually reminds me a little bit of the way that we have to move around docked vehicles at the space station, because that's my background, is space stations. So the space station just became so much of a hub that now we have to sort of maneuver maneuver the vehicles around sometimes to just sort of make it all happen logistically. And it sounds like that's happened here at the port times 100. It just seems like there's so much need to figure this out. Also, trying to figure out an alternate solution. So when we are thinking about the future, even just 10 years from now, let alone 50 years from now, 100 years from now, what is the solution to this problem? Because space is always going to be finite. I mean, by space, I mean the physical land and ports are always going to be finite. We can, to some degree, extend it, but how much? And is there something else we can be doing with launch and reentry and the refurbishment or preparations to launch again that can make it more streamlined? And I do have something coming up for you in the future about this subject, so stay tuned. When people think about space, they don't realize just how much is involved in getting things to space, the launch process itself, how do we get things off the ground logistically, the whole operations. And so as I'm learning more, I'm hoping I'm imparting this on you. It actually ties really well with last month's speaker at the National Space Club Florida Committee. And if you haven't seen that video, Colonel Meredith Egg gave an interesting talk about how the 45th Space Wing Delta, how they've just been swimming like ducks, where they seem serene on the top, but under the water it's like this, because they just can't keep up with the pace. There's so much going on that it's really, really hard to adjust to those new levels every year. And so if you're interested in that subject, watch this video next.